Stop Motion is a new horror film from newcomer Robert Morgan. If you like psychological horror thriller films such as Black Swan, Enemy, or to some extent The Babadook, then you'll be right at home here. Stop Motion is a disturbing, gory, psychological horror film that slowly gets under your skin until it explodes into madness. I, for one, enjoyed the hell out of this movie, but it will not be for everyone. So before I dig into stop motion, I just want to start with a quick warning about this movie. If you're someone who is a vegetarian or just someone who is grossed out by raw meat, then I would go into stop motion with caution, as there are multiple scenes in this movie that involve raw meat. However, if this is you, but you're still interested in this movie, please feel free to leave me a comment below, and I'd be happy to shed some light on what these scenes are without spoilers so that you can make a better judgment call before seeing this movie. So, with that out of the way, let's continue. Stop motion is about Ella, a stop motion animator. She lives with her mother, who is a well renowned stop motion director. Ella's mother is working on her final stop motion film. However, she is aging and is unable to use her hands, so she needs Ella to perform the animations for her. Ella's mother is a tough, often cruel woman to Ella. And one day, Ella's mother has an accident that sends her into a coma. Ella moves into her own apartment and decides that she's going to finish her mother's movie, but doesn't have an idea of how to finish it. Ella befriends a little girl who lives in her building, and that little girl suggests that Ella scrap her mother's movie and make her own, thus sending Ella on a journey to create her own film, sending her down a rabbit hole of madness. I will leave the plot summary at that because I feel the less you know, the better. So let's start with the stop motion aspect of the film because I think that's the main selling point for this movie. The stop motion sequences in this film are excellent. They are creepy and very unsettling, and the puppet designs are very, very off putting. Make no mistake, this is not Fantastic Mr. Fox. I found these stop motion moments to be so good that I kind of wish that was the movie I was watching. I hope that the director will make a short film with all of these assets one day because I think they're super compelling. And now I'm kicking myself in the ass here because I wish I could compare this movie's puppet designs to the film Mad God. But unfortunately, I have not seen Mad God yet. And yes, I know, I need to see that film. It's been on my watch list for a while, but now after watching stop motion, I think I might finally check it out. The one thing I'll say about this film is that I wish the stop motion stuff would have carried over into the real world more often. Most of the stop motion sequences in this film take place in the context of Ella's film. However, I would have loved more scenes of the puppets coming to life in the real world. There is, let's say, a chase sequence about midway through the movie that involves the puppets that I thought was absolutely jaw-dropping, and I wish the film went a little harder in showing us more of these types of scenes. And I'm trying to be vague here, but if you see this movie, you'll know exactly what chase scene I'm talking about. It's like one of the most memorable moments of the film. So yeah, if you're a fan of stop motion and aren't afraid to see like disturbing looking puppets, then there's a lot here to whet your appetite. And along the same lines, the gore in this film is extremely effective. I don't cover my eyes much in horror films, but there were a couple scenes in this movie that I had to look away, so I give the movie props for that. It takes a lot for me to close my eyes. And the gore hits so hard in the last act of the movie. The last 30 minutes of this film go so hard in the paint that it is definitely worth the slow burn. So, with the thumbs up on the stop motion aspect of the film, how is the story? It is a little derivative, if I'm being honest. It's your like typical character going crazy, what is real, what isn't real type of stuff. And even though we pretty much know where the film is going to end up, the inclusion of the stop motion gimmick is enough to make it entertaining. I'll also point out that I can easily see this film confusing many people, including myself. It's a film that is packed full of symbolism and surreal imagery. This is one of those types of psychological horror films that doesn't spell everything out for you. It's up to you to be on this film's wavelength to piece together some of its obscurities. I can see many YouTube videos in the future trying to explain this movie. And there are many themes throughout this movie, but my big takeaway from this movie is that it's about artists who are obsessed with their work and what that obsession does to one's mental health, which in this movie doesn't end well to say the least. It's also about being creatively bankrupt and how do we get past that? It's also about dominating parents and what that damage does to us after those parents are gone. They may be gone, but the damage they do to us remains forever. Again, there's a lot going on in this movie, but to the film's credit, I think it balances them all pretty well. And I'm eager to see how a general audience will take this movie. And I look forward to all the explanation videos. Because I'll be honest, so much of the film's imagery went over my head. And now I can feel you judging me. The one negative I will say about the movie is in its horror sequences. The thing about psychological horror versus like a normal average horror film is that psychological horror, for the most part, operates in a world of obscurity. In a normal horror film, we'll see our protagonist trying to get away from a ghost, a demon, or a serial killer. And if it's done right and we care about the protagonist, the horror scenes are effective because we care about the character and we want them to survive. But in a psychological horror film such as this, it's a little more complicated. There are a handful of sequences in this film that are supposed to be scary and thrilling. However, I never found myself to be scared or thrilled in these specific scenes. And that's because the whole time I know what's happening isn't real. Therefore, I don't feel the protagonist is in any real danger. And because of that, the horror sequences never felt scary or thrilling. And don't get me wrong, there are creepy, unsettling sequences in this film that are very effective. But I'd argue that those scenes aren't really trying to scare me. In other words, those scenes aren't trying to build up to a jump scare. All of the scenes that lead to a jump scare never really worked for me in this film because, again, I never thought these scenes were real to begin with. And if it's not real, I'm not emotionally invested in the fate of the character because I know the protagonist is going to be okay. So, in the end, I think this is a must watch for anyone out there who loves psychological horror. If you love horror films that make you think, that forces you to piece things together, surreal horror, then this is a film for you. Not to mention the amazing gore effects. As I said, the last 30 minutes of this film is batshit crazy, and I'd argue it's worth the price of admission alone. Is it a perfect film? No. Is it a wholly original film? No. But I think with the inclusion of the creepy stop motion scenes, the gore, and the themes, stop motion is one you don't want to sleep on. It's a fantastic, disturbing, psychological horror film, and as of late February, the best horror film of 2024.